We do have the NBA playoffs going on right now. Unfortunately, the Sixers not part of this, but I've enjoyed watching. It's been some really good basketball. Last night we had the Mavericks win. The Knicks are up 2-0. And we thought, you know what? We're out of the Sixers, but not really. Our mind's still there in a lot of ways on what they're going to do next. Let's talk to our guy, Danny Green. He's on the line right now. Odyssey NBA insider Danny Green. Insider calls brought to you by the all-new Hyundai 2024 Santa Fe, equipped for adventure. Danny, how you doing, man?
Danny!
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Pretty good, Danny. I'm about to go ahead and ask you the question that's been burning up the internet the last couple of days.
Oh man,
you know what I'm about to go with. Is there 30 NBA players right now that you feel can play in the NFL?
Yeah.
I'll let you finish. Yeah. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the debate, man. It's interesting. A lot of us grown up playing both sports, so I think there's NFL guys that could play basketball and there's NBA guys that could play football. But I think it's the reason why they call us some of the best athletes in the world is because I think we're a little bit more adaptable and adjustable. We can adapt and adjust to other sports better than other sports can adapt and adjust to ours. I don't think we're the toughest sport. I would have to say hockey, boxing, like MMA, like that stuff. But the fact that we do use physicality, hands-eye coordination, takes skill work, they say we're some of the best athletes because given a task, we can adapt and adjust to it quicker than other athletes can.
The way you explained it, Danny, I can't argue that. I'm gonna go ahead. I'll leave it alone.
All right, let me throw another element in because I'm curious what you think of this. So I saw Chris Long, the former Eagle, and obviously his dad Howie Long. Really good NFL player, Chris. His take on it was not that you guys couldn't physically do it, athletically, all that, size, speed, all that. His question was.
Is mentally.
Mentally, could you handle the hard coaching? There's a perception, Danny. I'm wondering if you think it's reality.
I mean, today's NBA is different than old school, but don't get it twisted. Old school NBA guys usually coach way differently. We grew up playing the sport mentally. They play a game a week, right? Obviously, there's less teams. I guess was it 16 teams or so. We have 30. They have bigger rosters, so there's a lot of things that come into play. There are different positions that you don't have to be super strong. You don't have to be super this or super that, or super tall, super a different, extremely big in size. So there's adaptable, positions for them. So yes, mentally, we play a lot of games. We play a lot more games. It's taxing on us physically. Obviously, we have guys that find ways, I won't say to manipulate, but draw fouls. They're skilled in drawing fouls, and they use that as you guys have a flopping rule.
I was about to say that's flopping.
That has nothing to do with the physicality of the game or the physicality of the person. These guys are strong enough, physical enough to play those sports, and if they wanted to adapt to something, if they started at an early age, they could adapt to it. Guys can run. We can run. We can play physical. Mind you, football sport has adapted too. Like we forget, they took out a lot of the hitting. With helmets, like guys don't wear pads like that anymore. Guys don't hit like that anymore like they used to because there's so many rules and regulations. They don't want anybody to see anybody get hurt. So both sports have changed tremendously since I've grown up. I watched the sport and played. So I played football too growing up. I was safety, quarterback. I could have played receiver. I could have played a multitude of positions. Not saying I could play on the professional level, but a lot of us did get recruited in college too to play football. So I think we're just adaptable, and so we do have the physicality and the mental to do it. Maybe not today's NBA, it's a little different, but for sure, old school guys, 90s, 2000s, they were coached differently and had a different mentality.
Yeah, it's a fun debate.
He knew this was coming, though.
Yeah,
he knew it was coming.
I mean, it's a fun one. It is a fun debate.
I've answered it before. I mean, it's not that way, but I've been asked once or twice before. I've seen it going around. When you said the debate that's going around, I knew it was the hottest topic. It was only a couple things that could have been. And it's that, or it could have been, the Shaq and Shannon Sharp thing that's going on today.
I know that we'll probably have to talk about that one off the air. That one is wild. That's wild.
Yeah, it is. All right, Danny, let's get to one that's on a lot of people's minds in Philadelphia, and that's what's next for the Sixers here. Daryl Morey had his end-of-season press conference on Monday, and he basically laid it out, saying that their big need this offseason is going to be a wing that could score and help them in the playoffs and kind of play off of Joel and Tyrese Maxey and be that missing piece. And, Danny, the names are, starting to kind of come in everyone's minds. Paul George is set to potentially be a free agent. There's some questions on Jimmy Butler staying in Miami. And then, of course, there's always the idea that maybe LeBron James moves teams again. Danny, those three names, if you were Daryl Morey, and I say it's a blank sheet, you could have any of them, which one do you think would be the best fit with Maxey and Embiid here?
I would have to go with Paul George because I think he's more of a stretch shooting threat. You could play the catch and shoot game with Tyrese and Joel. He can give you space. Also can handle a second group. Jimmy is obviously the ultimate competitor, but he's more of a ball handler and similar style as Ben when they had Ben Simmons there. But they're all good fits. LeBron, he's older, and I just don't see him ever going to Philly. So, but yeah, I think Bron probably needs more the ball in his hands more. He'll probably play point guard, so I would say Paul George would be a good look or a good fit for them. Either way, they start to find other pieces to surround those guys with that would make sense. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do that.
How do you feel about the perception that Paul George and Joel Embiid together, that wouldn't be a good duo because, they're perceived by some NBA players as being a soft duo?
Who's some NBA players?
Well, I didn't want to. I didn't want to
it.
be messy, but Evan Turner basically said they both two.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in the majority of the opinion. Joel does get injuries. I wouldn't call him soft. He does have some injuries here and there. People don't like the fact that he skillfully draws fouls, which some people will call flopping. But I think he's a guy that has toughness to him. Paul George, he plays a good amount of games. I don't think he's a soft player. Like those guys, I don't see as soft. But yes, I couldn't see the majority of the league thinking that. I think that they would be a good duo. I think they're very skilled. I think they can do a lot of things. When you have Tyrese Maxey, that third person, you got three scorers, and you forget there's 15, 16 other guys on the roster. You know what I'm saying? Like you could surround your roster with other guys that if you think that need to be tougher or you need to make those other guys tougher, you can't. There's a reason why they brought P.J. Tucker in for a moment. There's other guys out there you can get, some 3 and D guys that can play, that can give you some toughness, give you some different variety. Defensively, Brooklyn has a bunch of 3 and D guys. You can go there and get one of them. But yeah, we'll see what kind of free agents come about. I know Clay is supposed to be free too, so there's a lot of different pieces that are out there that you didn't expect to be out there. That you could put alongside Joel and Tyrese.
Speaking of that, because we talked about this a little bit, and we talk about the way that the New York Knicks are playing right now. They have like Jalen Brunson and like a bunch of good role players. Do you feel like the NBA is kind of going back to that right now? Because it used to be the big three, and you had to have 3 superstars in order to win a championship. Do you feel like the NBA is starting to go back to the role player and help win a championship?
I don't think they ever left it. You know what I'm saying? You don't think you needed 3 big superstars to win a championship. 3 have done it a couple of times, but there's a lot of teams that have done it without 3 superstars.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you had Cleveland with Kyrie and Bron, like we said, us in San Antonio and Toronto, we didn't have 3 superstars. We had obviously in LA we had a bunch of good, but it takes pieces. You have 2 and you take good pieces around you. So I don't think they ever left it. Going back to that, it makes sense. Some big threes have worked, some haven't. We've seen it, I guess, in Boston for the first time, then Miami. And then, I guess in Golden State they had a big 3, but Golden State had really good teams with just role players too. They had teams like that that won in Dallas. They didn't have a bunch of big 3. So, and I think people are starting to see. I think you're saying that's because the big 3 in Phoenix just didn't pan out. There's a lot of big 3s that just don't pan out.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen in Brooklyn and Phoenix. Just because you have 3 superstars doesn't mean it's going to work together. And now you're eating up most of your cap space with those 3 guys, and you can't even surround yourself with solid role players, so it's harder. But yeah, so I don't think the league ever left that, and I think it makes sense. But yeah, the Knicks are a very good team, and those guys are very good role players, but they're not just, just a lot of them make up superstars. You're talking about DiVincenzo, you're talking about OG Anunoby,
mm-hmm.
Mr. Robinson, Hartenstein. Like, these are really good players. They're superstars in their roles. So
gotcha.
Deuce McBride, these aren't just regular role players. These are guys that are for cheap, and everything like that. But these guys are some of them are one of your top options in other teams. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
You guys need to pay a lot of money to keep.
For sure. Insider Call is brought to you by the all-new Hyundai 2024 Santa Fe, equipped for adventure with capable features like available H-Track all-wheel drive and standard third-row seating. All right, let's end with this, Danny. But a lot of people are enjoying and watching and seeing what's happening in Minnesota. Anthony Edwards, are we watching the birth of the next great NBA player? Is this guy the future face of the league?
Definitely. It's crazy because there's so many guys. Our league is in such good hands. There's so many guys you could say coming up that could be the face of our league. You got Wemby. You got, Luka is another one. Jokic, those guys, Jason Tatum, Shea, SGA, who I thought should have been MVP. Ja Morant, even though he hasn't been talked about much this year in a positive light, but he's a guy that everybody looks at, could be the face. There's so many young players that are really good, but Ant Edwards is really doing it on the stage right now. And, it's kind of like, I won't say a Booker run, because, Booker had a similar run when they went to the finals. Obviously, he's not as athletic as Ant-Man, but for him to put up those numbers, like put himself in the D-Wade category conversation, some people compare him to Michael Jordan, which I said, I mean, you can see his manner, his movement is not crazy, but so the accolades and the resume, it's not there yet. But yes, with all that being said, they had an unbelievable game the other night, and I don't want to be victim to the moment, so I don't base that one night, that one game off of everything. I don't count Denver out, and I don't think Minnesota is all of a sudden necessarily just the title favorites because they beat Denver one game pretty well. Like, they beat them 2 games, but the first game was way closer. Nazi Reed had a great fourth quarter, hit 2 bank threes, and that's how, or at least 1 bank three, and that's how they won the game. Because usually they're not good in the fourth quarter, but Denver is a defending champs for a reason, and I expect them to get back in the series. And Minnesota, Cat played extremely well, deserves flowers. I don't know if he can sustain that. I don't know if all those guys can sustain that. Their role players are playing unbelievable. Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Nazi Reed off the bench have been huge for them. So we will see tonight. I know Ant Edwards is not the guy I'm worried about. I know he'll stay consistent. Minnesota's a really good team, but a lot of people are already crowning them coming out of the West and being champions. And I'm like, it's just one game. You know what I'm saying? The one game that they won by 20, 30, it's like, all right, they beat the defending champs. They had a really bad night. Obviously, they forced them to have a bad night, but they had a really bad night, and Minnesota had a really good night shooting. So I don't want to fall victim to the – now, tonight, if they do it again, we might be having a different conversation next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be hard not to. Danny, we appreciate you hopping on. Enjoy all the playoff action, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you, Danny.
Appreciate you.
For sure. Appreciate you guys, man.
There he goes. Danny Green, Odyssey NBA Insider. Insider Calls brought to you by the all-new Hyundai 2024 Santa Fe, equipped for adventure. So Danny is on board with the Paul George idea for the Sixers, and he did not agree with Evan Turner's notion that they're soft.